I often get asked, what does it actually feel like to have ADHD? And it's a tough question to answer because when I tell them the hard parts like lack of organization, time blindness, forgetting things, I get this kind of empty nod. Like I know the person's thinking, yeah, we all struggle with that from time to time. What makes you so special? And I don't actually know where that fine line is drawn between just struggling with something and actually having a clinical diagnosis. But the one thing I do know about the ADHD experience that is perhaps unique just to us is the unpredictability and the inconsistency around how we show up. So, yes, we absolutely do have some executive function issues based on how our brains are wired, but that's not really how I define what ADHD feels like. To me, the ADHD experience mostly feels like the absolute randomness and crapshoot of how we show up in terms of our energy on any given day. Our performance is completely inconsistent from one day to the next. And the really frustrating part is that we know we're capable of a lot more. We know we're smart and we know we can do things, but there's this energetic gap around the execution piece that sometimes makes it really hard to execute on the things we know how to do. And it is that inconsistency that leads to a lack of self trust where we can't even really rely on ourselves when we're called to show up and do something. It's the reason why I hate having appointments and commitments on my calendar because when I commit to something, I might be feeling high energy and feeling good, but I have no idea how that future self is going to feel when it comes time to show up and do the thing. And it is that experience, for me at least, that defines the ADHD experience. It's not that we struggle with certain executive functions. It's this inability to trust whether or not we can show up and do the thing when we need to do the thing that really messes with our lives on a number of levels. And that's what I want to dive into in today's video. But first, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Kara McGill. I'm an ADHD coach and creator and late diagnosed ADHDer. And I'm here for the busy, ambitious brains who want to do a ton of stuff, but we have no idea what our energy is going to be like when we actually have to do the thing we said we were going to do. So let's talk about it and see what we can do about it. So, like I said, our energy, our interests, and that cognitive ignition point where we need to actually turn ourselves on and do something is wildly unpredictable and therefore not trustworthy, not only to us but also to the people around us, which is why we get these labels of being lazy or flaky or untrustworthy. And really, nothing can be further from the truth. It's not that we're intentionally being that way at all. It's that our energy is so incredibly unpredictable and unreliable. But here's the interesting thing. When we do have optimal energy and we're able to show up at our best, we can really shine. We're creative, we're dynamic, we're problem solvers. When everybody else is in chaos, we can really hone in and hyper focus and get things done very often quicker than anyone else around us. So that potential does show up from time to time, proving to us that yes, in fact, we can do things, and proving to the people around us that yes, we are indeed smart, but we're just not living up to our potential because we're not working hard enough. And that is clearly not the case. And because we've lived with this dynamic for our entire lives, it makes us extra sensitive to the comments we hear from other people, whether it's calling us names like lazy or untrustworthy, or the unhelpful, encouraging words to just try harder. You can do so much. So it's no wonder that we end up struggling with something called rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is unique to the ADHD experience, where we take any perceived negative feedback, whether it's real or not, and it completely crushes us to the point where it can take us literally days to overcome something that somebody may have said to us in passing that meant nothing to them, but totally crushed our spirit for an entire week. And in my view, maybe the worst part about this whole ADHD experience is that, yes, I know that I'm capable of a lot. And when I'm in that mode, I make commitments and decisions that in the moment seem totally reasonable. But when it comes to actually following through with the thing, if I'm having a low energy day, it just makes it feel so much worse that yes, I committed to something. Yes, I made a decision to do something, but now I have no idea how I'm actually going to do it. I could either muscle through and suck it up and completely exhaust myself, or say no, in which case I'm either disappointing myself or even worse, disappointing somebody else. But if you've been around this channel for a minute, then you know I am not somebody to dwell in problems. So yes, I accept that this is a challenge for me and it's been there my entire life. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing I can do to change the situation or at least manage it, because that's what I really want to teach you guys on this channel. It has nothing to do with specific tips or tricks. It's all about accepting what our challenges are, but then taking a growth mindset approach to seeing what we can do about them. Because at the end of the day, it's not our fault that we were born with the brains that we have, but it is our responsibility to manage it so that we can have a life we love, because it's nobody else's responsibility, right? Nobody's coming to fix us or help us. We got to do that for ourselves. So on that note, I'm going to get off my soapbox and let's get into it. So when it comes to managing unpredictable energy, I found it helpful to think about this in two ways. The first way is all about lifestyle design. And I've talked about this before, but it's truly understanding who you are, where your curiosities lay, where your interests are, and acknowledging the fact that you might have a short attention span and things might get old really quickly for you and you want to jump to thing to thing to thing. So understanding yourself and your own nuances and the things that really do capture your curiosity for the long haul, that's where you can have a big impact in your lifestyle design. Because if you can find the right job focus and the right employment circumstances and the right people to surround yourself with, whether it's your friends who understand you or your partner who understands how your brain is wired and gives you enough space to live in a way that works for you. As you understand those things about yourself, you can become more intentional about how you set up your life. However, I'm sure I don't have to tell you that we don't always have the freedom or privilege to choose our environments, where we work, the people we surround ourselves with. And having an ADHD diagnosis, unfortunately, doesn't give us a hall pass from having to do regular adulty things like paying our taxes or having to show up on time for work. We still have to adult, unfortunately. But here's something important to think about and remember. When you attribute all of your negative traits and behaviors to ADHD, it makes adulting that much harder. We start to believe these negative traits and behaviors about ourselves are never going to go away. We're always going to be late. We're always going to be disorganized. We're never going to reach our potential because we have ADHD. Not exactly the type of thing you want to put on your resume, right? But here's the thing. How can you be completely unfocused if you also have the ability to hyperfocus? And how is it that you can never get anything done, and yet right before something is due, your brain just turns on and you hammer through and actually hit the deadline? Both are true, right? So at the end of the day, I think it's really important not to get caught up in labels. And more importantly, don't define yourself by some of these behaviors and traits that show up some of the time, because at other times, you are the complete opposite human being. And the reality is that all of those skills, prioritization, time management, procrastination, all of them, they're just behaviors and they can absolutely change. What's more important and what I really want you to focus on is to manage your state. Unlike a behavior or a trait, it is actually your state that's going to determine the quality of your energy and how you show up at any given moment. And this is one of the true game changers that I figured out for myself as I went through this experience of having very unpredictable energy. Because I found when I managed my state, my energy became more predictable and my good behaviors became more consistent. So I showed up in my business consistently. I show up in my relationships with my friends and family more consistently. And I'm showing up as the best version of myself more of the time. So what does it actually mean to focus on managing your state? This comes down to creating and building very specific self-care habits to manage your nervous system. Because when you have your nervous system under control, you're more attuned to your physical energy and your emotional state. And you have a much easier time regulating your emotions so that you can focus on things and follow through with them. And number one is sleep. It is undeniable how important it is to get quality sleep. And there is so much research available now that demonstrates the danger to our overall cognition when we are underslept day to day. So if you're having a hard time going to bed at night or you're not having quality sleep, that is probably the number one reason why your state is so unpredictable from day to day. The next thing to look at is food. Now, we generally know that the better we eat, the better we feel. But very often that can be difficult to do. And the number one reason why it's a challenge for most people is because they're skipping the lifestyle design part, where you're actually ensuring that the food in your house is not tempting you to eat poorly. But let's take that one step further, because it's not just about eating healthy. It has to do with really understanding how the food you eat impacts your physical state and your mood in any given moment. Personally, I know now that when I eat gluten, it has a really negative impact on my digestion. The knock-on effect of that is that my gut health is compromised. And when my gut health is compromised, I'm not creating enough serotonin. So I struggle with having a low mood and I can't focus. And the other part of that is when my digestion is off, my physical energy is a lot lower and it's really hard for me to work out. And working out, I know, is one of the number one ways that I can improve my state immediately. So all of these things interact with each other and they're so critically important to managing your state from day to day. The one other thing that I found incredibly helpful in terms of managing my state is being mindful of what I'm consuming, especially when it comes to social media, the news, anything like that that drags me down. I'm a highly sensitive person, so I can watch the news and feel completely wrecked for days. So I've been really careful about not watching news and curating any social media feeds I have so that I'm not seeing things that are triggering for me. I stay away from negative people because I find that incredibly draining. And recently I've been trying to read more fiction, which just allows my brain to take little mini vacations throughout the day. And I can't even begin to tell you how much of an impact that has had on my state. So that is what has been working for me. But again, those big categories are sleep, food, movement, and consumption habits. And if you can start to get curious about how those categories are impacting you without shame or self-judgment, but just curiosity, like, how do I feel after I eat this food versus that food? You can start to slowly shift those behaviors in a way that serves and supports your state rather than dragging you down, because the lower your state is, the more those undesirable traits and behaviors are actually going to show up and impact your life in ways that you don't want them to. So I hope I've given you some food for thought around managing your state for optimal consistency and showing up as your best self rather than defining yourself by traits and behaviors. And trust me, the more you focus on your state and the more you're able to elevate it, the less those behaviors and traits are going to get in your way. So on that note, guys, I wish you the best state possible today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.